In the exclusive enclave of Rosewood Hills, where manicured lawns and designer homes were as common as luxury cars, Dr. Victor Halston stood out as a pillar of success. At 45, he was at the pinnacle of his career as a plastic surgeon, with a thriving practice that catered to the elite of Los Angeles. His wife, Olivia, a former model turned interior designer, completed the picture of perfection that the Halstons presented to the world. Victor's day typically began early, with a jog through the neighborhood's winding streets, nodding politely to other early risers. He prided himself on maintaining the same physique he had in his 30s, often joking that he was his own best advertisement. By 7:30 a.m., he would be pulling his Tesla into the underground parking of his Beverly Hills clinic, ready to transform lives one scalpel stroke at a time. It was on a crisp autumn morning in 2022 that Cassandra Blake first walked into Dr. Halston's office. At 28, she was a recent transplant from Chicago, drawn to the glitz and glamour of LA. With her fiery red hair and vivacious personality, Cassandra immediately caught Victor's eye. He found himself lingering in the break room, hoping to catch a glimpse of her, or fabricating reasons to call her into his office. Olivia Halston, ever perceptive, noticed the change in her husband almost immediately. Victor, once attentive and affectionate, began to grow distant. He started working later, claiming a surge in high-profile clients. Olivia, no stranger to the fickle nature of beauty and attention, felt a gnawing unease growing in the pit of her stomach. As weeks turned into months, Victor's fascination with Cassandra evolved into an obsession. He began to imagine a life with her, convinced that she was the key to recapturing the youth and vitality he feared he was losing. He showered her with attention, offering her prime shifts and generous bonuses. Cassandra, initially flattered, soon became uncomfortable with Dr. Halston's obvious infatuation. One evening, as the clinic was closing, Victor made his move. He cornered Cassandra in the supply room, professing his feelings for her. "You've awakened something in me, Cassandra," he told her, his voice husky with desire. "I can't stop thinking about you. Leave with me tonight. I'll take care of everything." Cassandra, shocked and dismayed, firmly rejected his advances. "Dr. Halston, I'm flattered, but this is completely inappropriate. I see you as my mentor, nothing more. Please, let's forget this ever happened and maintain a professional relationship." Victor, unused to rejection, felt a surge of anger and humiliation. As Cassandra hurried out of the clinic, he stood alone in the darkened room, his mind racing with thoughts of revenge and possession. Little did anyone know, this rejection would set in motion a chain of events that would shatter the peaceful facade of Rosewood Hills and leave a trail of destruction in its wake. As summer turned to fall, Victor's obsession with Cassandra intensified. He began to scrutinize her every move, convinced that her rejection was merely a challenge to be overcome. He hired a private investigator to follow her, learning her routines, her favorite cafes, and the gym where she worked out. Victor's behavior at home became increasingly erratic, alternating between periods of detached silence and bursts of manic energy. Olivia, growing more concerned by the day, tried to reconnect with her husband. She planned intimate dinners and suggested they take a vacation, but Victor brushed off her attempts with thinly veiled irritation. One evening, after Victor had come home particularly late, Olivia confronted him. "What's happening to us, Victor?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You're never home, and when you are, it's like you're a million miles away." Victor, his eyes cold, replied, "Nothing's happening, Olivia. I'm just busy with work. Not all of us can spend our days redecorating living rooms." The sting of his words hung in the air, marking a turning point in their marriage. Meanwhile, at the clinic, Cassandra was becoming increasingly uncomfortable. She noticed Dr. Halston's lingering glances and the way he seemed to appear wherever she was. She confided in a fellow nurse, Maria, about her concerns. "I think I need to find a new job," Cassandra whispered during their lunch break. "Dr. Halston, he's not taking no for an answer." Maria, alarmed, urged Cassandra to report Victor's behavior to the medical board. But Cassandra, worried about the impact on her career, decided to handle it herself. She approached Victor in his office, determined to put an end to his advances once and for all. "Dr. Halston," she began, her voice firm despite her nervousness, "your behavior is making me extremely uncomfortable. If it doesn't stop immediately, I'll have no choice but to file a formal complaint." Victor, his face a mask of calm, nodded slowly. "I understand, Cassandra. I apologize if I've made you uncomfortable. It won't happen again." But behind his composed exterior, rage boiled. How dare she threaten him? He'd built this practice from nothing, and now this ungrateful girl thought she could ruin everything. As Cassandra left his office, relief washing over her, Victor began to plot. He couldn't let her destroy everything he'd worked for. He'd have to take care of this problem permanently. Over the next few weeks, Victor's demeanor changed dramatically. He became the model of professionalism at work, keeping his interactions with Cassandra strictly businesslike. At home, he made an effort to reconnect with Olivia, surprising her with flowers and suggesting they plan a second honeymoon. Olivia, relieved to see glimpses of the man she'd married, allowed herself to hope that they were turning a corner. But she couldn't shake the feeling that something was still off. Victor's smiles never quite reached his eyes, and there was a tension in his body that hadn't been there before. One crisp Saturday morning, Victor suggested they take a drive up the coast. "Just like old times," he said, flashing Olivia a smile that almost looked genuine. As they wound their way along the Pacific Coast Highway, Olivia found herself relaxing for the first time in months. But Victor's mind was elsewhere. In the trunk of the car, hidden beneath a blanket, lay a set of surgical instruments he'd taken from the clinic. As they approached a secluded lookout point, Victor's grip on the steering wheel tightened. He'd chosen this spot carefully, knowing it would be deserted this time of year. As he pulled into the empty parking lot, Victor turned to Olivia, his expression unreadable. "There's something I need to tell you," he said, his voice eerily calm. Olivia, sensing the shift in atmosphere, felt a chill run down her spine. She had no way of knowing that this scenic overlook would soon become the stage for a shocking act of violence that would tear apart their carefully constructed world. Victor's confession poured out in a torrent of words, his voice rising and falling with barely contained emotion. He told Olivia about his infatuation with Cassandra, his rejection, and the consuming obsession that had taken over his life. Olivia listened in stunned silence, her world crumbling around her with each passing second. "I can't let her ruin everything we've built," Victor said, his eyes wild with a mixture of desperation and determination. "She threatened to report me, to destroy my career. Our life, Olivia. Everything we've worked for." Olivia, her voice barely above a whisper, asked, "What are you saying, Victor? What have you done?" Victor's response chilled her to the bone. "I haven't done anything yet," he said, a manic gleam in his eye. "But I will, and I need your help, Olivia. We're in this together, aren't we? For better or worse, remember? Well, we're..." Horrified, Olivia reached for the door handle, intent on escaping this nightmare. But Victor was quicker. He grabbed her arm, his grip painfully tight. "You can't leave now," he hissed. "You're a part of this whether you like it or not." Back in Rosewood Hills, Cassandra was enjoying a rare day off. She'd spent the morning at her favorite yoga studio, trying to shake off the lingering unease that had plagued her since her confrontation with Dr. Halston. As she walked home, she noticed a sleek black car parked across the street from her apartment building. Something about it made her pause, a flicker of recognition sparking in her mind. Before she could place it, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Emergency at the clinic. Need you to come in ASAP." Frowning, Cassandra hesitated. It was her day off, and something felt off about the message. But her sense of duty won out, and she turned to head towards the clinic. As night fell, Victor's plan was set in motion. He had convinced a terrified Olivia to call Cassandra, feigning a medical emergency that required immediate attention. "Just get her to the house," he had instructed, his voice cold and detached. "I'll take care of the rest." Cassandra arrived at the Halston residence, confusion evident on her face as she took in the darkened windows and quiet street. She rang the doorbell, a sense of foreboding growing with each passing second. The door swung open, revealing Victor. His usual polished appearance was gone, replaced by a disheveled, wild-eyed man she barely recognized. "Dr. Halston?" she asked, taking an involuntary step back. "What's going on? Where's the emergency?" Victor's lips curved into a sinister smile. "The emergency, my dear Cassandra, is you," he said before lunging forward and dragging her into the house. Inside, Olivia watched in horror as Victor overpowered Cassandra, pressing a chloroform-soaked cloth to her face. As Cassandra's struggles weakened and she slumped to the floor, Olivia found her voice. "Victor, stop this madness!" she screamed. "It's not too late. We can get you help." But Victor was beyond reason. He turned to Olivia, his eyes blazing with a terrifying intensity. "Help? I don't need help. I need to fix this, to make everything perfect again. And you're going to help me, Olivia. You owe me that much." As Cassandra lay unconscious on the floor, Victor began to outline his grotesque plan. He would use his surgical skills to alter Cassandra's appearance, making her unrecognizable. Then they would dispose of her, erasing any trace of her existence from their lives. Olivia, her mind reeling, realized she was trapped in a nightmare of her husband's making. She knew she had to act, to find a way to stop this before it was too late. As Victor busied himself preparing his impromptu operating room, Olivia's eyes darted around, searching for anything she could use to overpower him. In that moment, as the clock ticked relentlessly forward and Cassandra's life hung in the balance, Olivia understood that the next few minutes would determine not just their fates, but the very essence of who she was as a person. Would she find the courage to stand up to the monster her husband had become, or would she become complicit in an unthinkable crime? As Victor meticulously laid out his surgical instruments on the dining room table, now transformed into a macabre operating theater, Olivia's mind raced. She knew she had only moments to act before Victor's twisted plan became irreversible. With trembling hands, she reached for her phone, hidden in the pocket of her cardigan. "What are you doing?" Victor's sharp voice cut through the tense silence. Olivia froze, her fingers inches from her phone. I was just checking the time," she lied, her voice quavering. Victor's eyes narrowed with suspicion. In 2 swift strides, he was at her side, roughly grabbing her arm. "Give me the phone, Olivia," he demanded, his voice low and dangerous. As he wrenched the device from her grasp, a notification flashed across the screen. A missed call from Detective James Reeves. Victor's face contorted with rage. "You called the police!" he roared, his grip on Olivia's arm tightening painfully. "How could you betray me like this?" In that moment, survival instinct took over. Olivia, fueled by adrenaline and desperation, brought her knee up sharply, catching Victor in the groin. As he doubled over in pain, she scrambled towards the kitchen, her fingers closing around the handle of a heavy cast-iron skillet. Victor, recovering quickly, lunged at her with a scalpel in hand. "You think you can stop me?" he snarled, his eyes wild with fury. "I made you, Olivia. You're nothing without me." As Victor raised the scalpel, Olivia swung the skillet with all her might. There was a sickening crack as it connected with Victor's skull, and he crumpled to the floor, the scalpel clattering beside him. Panting heavily, Olivia stood over her husband's motionless form, the reality of what had just transpired washing over her in waves of shock and disbelief. A soft moan from across the room snapped her back to the present. Cassandra was beginning to stir. With shaking hands, Olivia dialed 911. "Please," she gasped into the phone. "I need help. There's been an attack. Please hurry." The next hours passed in a blur of flashing lights, police sirens, and endless questions. Detective Reeves, a seasoned investigator with kind eyes and a gruff demeanor, gently coaxed the full story from a shell-shocked Olivia. Cassandra, still groggy from the chloroform, corroborated Olivia's account of Victor's obsession and the night's terrifying events. Victor, who had survived the blow to his head, was arrested and charged with attempted murder, kidnapping, and a host of other crimes. As he was led away in handcuffs, the man who had once been the pride of Rosewood Hills was a shadow of his former self, muttering incoherently about perfection and betrayal. In the weeks that followed, the scandal rocked the affluent community. Neighbors who had once envied the Halstons' seemingly perfect life now whispered behind closed doors about the darkness that had lurked beneath the surface. Olivia, grappling with the trauma of that night and the unraveling of her entire life, found an unexpected ally in Cassandra. The two women, brought together by unimaginable circumstances, formed a bond forged in shared pain and mutual support. As Victor awaited trial, more victims came forward. Patients who had suffered complications from unnecessary surgeries, nurses who had endured his inappropriate behavior. The man who had built an empire on the promise of perfection was revealed to be deeply flawed and dangerous. The trial, when it finally came, was a media sensation. Victor, his polished charm now gone, pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. But the jury, presented with overwhelming evidence of his calculated actions, didn't buy it. He was sentenced to 25 years to life, his fall from grace complete. For Olivia, the end of the trial marked the beginning of a long journey of healing and self-discovery. She sold the house in Rosewood Hills, unable to live with the memories it held, and used part of the proceeds to start a foundation supporting victims of domestic violence. Cassandra, forever changed by her brush with death, left the world of plastic surgery behind. She returned to school, pursuing a degree in psychology with the goal of helping others who had experienced trauma. As for Rosewood Hills, the community slowly recovered from the shock, but the legacy of the Halston case lingered. It served as a stark reminder that even in the most picturesque neighborhoods, behind the most flawless facades, darkness can lurk. In the end, the story of Victor Halston became a cautionary tale, a chilling example of how the pursuit of perfection can lead to destruction, and how the true measure of a person lies not in their outward appearance, but in the choices they make when faced with the unthinkable.